This is the BMW 3 Series. For 50 years, it's been chasing the same impossible goal. Stay small, stay fast, and never lose what made it matter. Every few years, BMW engineers open the same debate. Make it bigger or keep it pure? Faster or more efficient? And every time, one side loses. In 1975, BMW had a problem. The company had just survived bankruptcy. The cars that saved it were aging. And they needed a successor. Not a flagship, not a sports car. A compact sedan that could scale. So they built the E21. The first 3 Series. The engineers called it the baby shark. Not because it was aggressive, but because it looked hungry. Inside, BMW made a choice that became permanent. They angled the dashboard toward the driver. Not the passenger, the driver. The E21 wasn't revolutionary, but it did something dangerous. It defined expectations. Because once you tell the world, this is what a 3 Series is, you can't go backward. The E21 sold well enough to justify a successor, but it also created a trap. Every generation that followed would be judged not just on its own merits, but on whether it stayed true. The E21 didn't perfect the 3 Series. It just made sure BMW could never walk away from it. And the next generation? It would have to prove the rules actually worked. The E30 came out sharper, more aggressive. But the real gamble came 4 years later. In 1986, BMW did something no one expected. They took the 3 Series and built a race car for the street. They called it the M3. It wasn't the most powerful car BMW made. It wasn't the most expensive, but it became the most wanted. Suddenly, doctors and lawyers who could afford the big sedans chose the small one instead. Not because they had to, because they wanted to. The E30 didn't just prove the formula worked, it proved people would pay for it. But success has a cost. Because now, every 3 Series that followed wouldn't just be compared to the last generation. It would be compared to a legend. And legends? They're almost impossible to follow. And BMW felt that pressure immediately. By the early 1990s, the 3 Series was no longer a niche car. It was becoming mainstream. Customers wanted more comfort, more refinement, more safety, and regulators wanted more compliance. BMW couldn't ignore either. So in 1990, the E36 arrived, and for the first time, the 3 Series changed its character. It was longer, wider, heavier, not by accident, but by necessity. Inside, the cabin felt calmer, quieter, more grown up. Some enthusiasts called it soft, others called it mature. But here's what mattered. BMW didn't abandon the rules, it bent them. Rear-wheel drive stayed, balance still mattered, and the driver still came first. The E36 didn't chase passion, it chased scale. And it worked. Sales exploded. The 3 Series went global. But in doing so, BMW crossed a line it could never uncross. Because now, the 3 Series wasn't just a driver's car anymore. By the late 1990s, BMW was walking a tightrope. Go too far toward comfort and lose the soul. Go too far toward purity and lose the audience. The E46 was BMW's attempt to do the impossible. Balance everything. When it launched in 1998, nothing about it felt extreme, and that was the point. It wasn't the smallest, it wasn't the lightest, it wasn't the fastest, but it felt right. The steering talked, the chassis listened. The car shrank around the driver the moment you moved. This is where the 3 Series stopped arguing with itself. For a moment, everything aligned. Enthusiasts loved it, buyers trusted it, and BMW finally had breathing room. The E46 became the reference point, the one people still point to and say, that was the one. But perfection has a hidden problem. Once you reach it, every change after feels like a step away. By the mid-2000s, the rules changed. Safety standards tightened, technology exploded, efficiency stopped being optional. BMW didn't choose complexity, it inherited it. The E90 generation arrived heavier, smarter, and more isolated. Electric steering replaced feel. Electronics replaced intuition. On paper, it was better. In reality, it felt different. Some drivers adapted. Others noticed the distance immediately. BMW tried to compensate. More power here, stiffer suspension there. But something fundamental had shifted. The 3 Series was no longer a simple answer to a simple question. It was now trying to satisfy everyone: drivers, families, regulators, accountants. And for the first time, the original idea felt strained. Not broken, but stretched. BMW hadn't lost the 3 Series, but it was no longer certain what it was protecting. By the early 2000s, BMW faced a reality it could no longer avoid. The old formula was under pressure from every side. Emissions targets tightened, fuel efficiency became mandatory, and buyers wanted technology that didn't exist when the rules were written. So BMW made its most controversial decision yet. They changed the rules. When the F30 arrived in 2012, the shift was immediate. Turbocharging became standard. Electric steering replaced hydraulics. Efficiency mattered as much as engagement. To purists, it felt like betrayal. To BMW, it felt like survival. Because the F30 wasn't built for yesterday's arguments. It was built for a future where performance had to justify itself. It was faster, more efficient, more advanced. But something was missing. Not speed, not capability. Feeling. BMW tried to tune it back in. Sport modes, stiffer suspensions, sharper trims. But the truth was unavoidable. The F30 didn't evolve the original idea. It replaced it. And once you cross that line, there's no going back. The question now wasn't how to protect the 3 Series. It was whether the idea still mattered. By the time the G20 arrived in 2019, the criticism was loud. Too digital, too distant, too far removed from what made the car special. But instead of apologizing, BMW recalibrated. The G20 didn't try to rewind time. It tried to reconnect. Steering was reworked. Chassis balance was sharpened. Technology became supportive, not dominant. This wasn't a return to simplicity. It was a negotiation between old expectations and modern reality. The G20 feels heavier than the E46, more complex than the E30, but it also feels intentional. For the first time in years, BMW wasn't chasing the past. It was translating it. The question that started in 1975, stay small, stay fast, stay meaningful, still doesn't have a perfect answer. But the G20 comes closer than most expected. Not by preserving the old rules, but by understanding why they existed. The BMW 3 Series didn't survive by standing still. It survived by changing, carefully, imperfectly, and under pressure. And 50 years later, it's still chasing the same impossible goal. That's not tradition, that's evolution.